Sir Patrick, how are you?
I'm okay. I did a 90-minute fresh air interview yesterday, and I talked too much. So that's why I'm talking like this now, because my voice got very tired. So I'm trying
I thought
to
you were
save
just doing
it.
an impression of my character from The Witcher.
It was that as well. Yes, you can hear, the kind of modest respect in my voice now. I thought it was more effective than me yelling at you like I did a couple of days ago.
That's exactly what I did with the character. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Sir Patrick, we met many, many years ago. I believe it was in 2003. You were casting for The Lion in Winter, and I had been acting for 3 years at that stage. I had my first job, which was The Count of Monte Cristo, when I was 17 years old. I left school 1 year early, and I was incredibly nervous to audition in front of an actor of your caliber. And I went into the audition. I had spent weeks learning my lines, and by the time I got in there, I'd whipped myself into such a frenzy that I completely flubbed the audition. I didn't remember my lines, I forgot how to act, and then I left with my tail in between my legs and called my agent immediately afterwards. You were very gracious. You said, "Thank you very much," and it was clear to me that I was not going to be getting this role. So I called my agent and told my agent as much. And they said, "Don't worry about it. It's okay. You will. There'll be other auditions. You're not going to get everyone. You're not going to nail everyone." And as I was walking down a street in London, I forget which one it was, I suddenly thought, I'm not going to walk away from an audition with Sir Patrick Stewart and have it be a bad one. I'm going to at least try to get back in there because I know I can do better. And so I went back in, and my agent arranged for me to come back in. You said it was okay, and then I did another audition, which went far better. It wasn't good enough to get the job, but it was far better. And you gave me very, very kind words, and you said, "I'm so glad that you came back in." And that gave me such strength throughout my career, and I've never forgotten it, because I tend to find as an actor, we can judge ourselves incredibly harshly if we get it wrong. And I feel like acting is a skill which doesn't always appear when you reach into that abyss, hoping that you can clutch it and pull it out. And on that day, I did not. And then I came back in and I managed to find some space. And you were very, very gracious, and you let me know that I did the right thing. And that meant a lot to me. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Oh, Henry, that's a delightful story. I think it probably says more about me as a producer than it does about you as an actor. I was, Glenn Close and I were playing the leading roles in Lion in Winter, but my company were also producing it too. And I was continually finding myself in situations that were unfamiliar to me. And auditioning was one of them. I'd had some bad audition experiences in my career. I mean,
Okay.
directors who took telephone calls while I was actually doing my audition. Actually, that happened to me twice. And the second time, the director said, yeah, just go on. It's fine, just go on. Yeah, I know what I'm going conversation.
Yeah, I'm never hiring this guy. Not this guy, no.
So I always, when I was in the auditioning spot, the audition, I always tried to be as welcoming and relaxed and as easygoing as possible. Because the one thing I learned about sitting behind the table, have you produced or directed, Henry?
I have not produced nor directed. Producing is something which I have my eye on, and I've started to get the itch for directing. I've got a lot to learn, but I haven't done anything yet.
Well, what I discovered, I started sitting in on auditions when we were filming Star Trek: The Next Generation. And first of all, I was shocked by how brusque and offhand my fellow producers and directors were with actors who came in. And I would always make a point of getting up from behind the table, meeting them as they came into the room, shaking hands with them, asking them how they were, a few questions, and then sitting down. Until my fellow producer said to me, "Will you stop doing that? You don't have to make friends with these people." And I said, "But all I'm trying to do is relax them, make them feel easier." But the one thing that I learned, which I tell young actors if I'm, doing a masterclass or whatever, you must realize that when you audition, the people who are doing the auditioning and watching you, they want you to be the best actor that ever walks through the door. That's what we're hungry for. We don't want another disappointment. We want something that will blow us away. So I say, you've already got a head start. They're happy you're in their room. They want you to do remarkably well. Just, hold on to that. And then the other thing about auditions I've always found is, as soon as you've done them, erase them. Because the chances are you won't get the job and you'll just fret about it and be sad. But I thought it shows great balls that you came back a second time. Thanks for that story.
Yeah, whether it was for better or for worse, it was definitely it was a good moment. It was a good moment, and normally I would just forget, but I had grown up watching you with my father on The Next Generation, so it was something which I really, really wanted to do well in, and I thought I'm not gonna accept that as his lasting impression of me, and I'm glad I came back as well.
Oh, well. Yes. Well, I am only glad to be sitting face to face with you, although face to face thanks to technology, not in real life. Where are you, by the way, Henry?
I am in the UK. I'm in just near Reading. There's a studio here which I'm nearby, and I'm using it because it has a better Wi-Fi than my home, or the home I'm staying in.
Yeah. Well. Welcome to Los Angeles,
Thank you very much.
We are in lockdown here in LA. I wanted to ask you something. I know that you have, as we would say, a public school, or here they would say a private school education. And do you have any sense at all what impact that kind of education had on your ambition to act and the way you acted, and what I assumed that you were acting on the stage to begin with? Was there any impact? Because I had no education at all. I'm an ignorant son of a bitch, and I've always been curious about someone like you.
I think it did actually have a fairly serious impact. I consider myself incredibly fortunate to have gone to a school like Stowe School, which is the school I went to. They had a really good acting department, and
They do, really?
They did, yes. I mean, I don't know if they still do, if it's gotten even better than it was, but there was a full theatre in the school, and there was a very small theatre as well for house productions, boarding house productions. We had house plays every year. We had a senior play and a junior play as well. And when I was in boarding school, and even now, actually, just not a very cool person. And I didn't have a very successful time socially at school. And so acting was a wonderful, wonderful outlet for me. As children, I think a lot of us have that sense of trying to discover who we are as personalities, and I was struggling with that because what my personality was not considered cool or popular or whatever was down at that time, and so I got to be whoever the character was on stage. And I couldn't be criticized for that, ironically, because all we live by is critics now. But I couldn't be criticized for the character I was, because I was playing a character from a playbook. And so it just was a wonderful outlet for me. And I really, really enjoyed it. I consider myself incredibly fortunate. And they were always very supportive. There was 2 casting groups came around my boarding school when I was young. One for I Dream of Africa. I think it was I Dream of Africa with Kim Basinger. And I got shortlisted for that, didn't get that role. And then the second one was for the Count of Monte Cristo, which I did get. And then I left school 1 year early to go do that. And so that education, the education which really helped, the part of which really helped, I find, was the boarding school element. Because when you get thrown out into the big wide world, and especially in the acting world, you have to accept knockbacks an awful lot. And everything feels like a judgment of your ability and character. And having been in boarding school, having been separated from my parents for a while and used to it, by the time I was out there and acting and looking for jobs in LA and London, it wasn't so bad. I was okay with it, and I wasn't suffering from homesickness at that stage. It wasn't a distraction. It was actually enormously beneficial to have gone through the boarding school experience.
Henry, am I right in thinking from what I just heard you say that you felt comfortable becoming somebody else and for a short period of time not being Henry Cavill, but being whoever you were playing? Is that what you were saying?
That is absolutely correct, yes.
Well, it's extraordinary. Maybe we should do huge research with Equity, because that was totally my experience. The biggest attraction to me, to begin, well, 2 attractions. One was that I was no longer Patrick Stewart, who I didn't think was up to much. And the other thing was, because my home life could be a little bit scary at times, I felt safer on a stage being someone else than anywhere else in my life at that time. And it would be great to know if this was another experience that actors had at the very beginning that made the theatre so appealing. People who are not actors say to me, I don't know how you do it. You walk out onto that brightly lit stage and there are 1,500 people all there sitting in silence waiting to hear what you're going to say and do. And I couldn't do that. But you and I do that. And it feels so good to be there. Am I right?
You are absolutely right. It's actually, you've put it perfectly. That's exactly how I felt in school on stage, and exactly how I feel when the cameras are rolling on set. It's an interesting insight to the psyches of actors, the escapism from ourselves. So you were acting in school? Or
I
was
did,
it after you?
When I was 17, I went to the Bristol Olympic School. And that was where my life really began, because to be surrounded by other people of my age. I was Robin Phillips, may he rest in peace, the director, and I were the 2 youngest people in my year. But to be every day surrounded by people who felt like me, who wanted to do what I did, because I had been thought of as being a bit weird where I was growing up, because I wanted to act. And to them, my friends, it was just, I was a show-off, and that was all. And it wasn't true. There were other reasons. But then to find a whole community and society of people who felt just like me. And I think it's one of the reasons why I've come to love companies so much, whether it's on stage or like doing a show like Picard or Next Generation. We were a company. I continually insisted that we should think of ourselves as an ensemble, and that there wasn't Jean-Luc Picard sitting in the captain's chair, but we were a group who were all united in doing one thing. You know? And does that make sense to you?
It absolutely does make sense. It's something which I'm beginning to experience more and more these days. I don't have a big theatre background. I did a little bit of theatre in school before going into the big wide world and acting professionally. And I haven't really been part of companies before. I've been part of casts and crews on films, but there's a different kind of connection there. It's often only the people who you're doing scenes with that you can really build a connection with. Yes. And I found the older I've gotten, I want to get more involved with everyone else, given the time, of course. I mean, TV is very quick these days, and schedules are very tight. But I do like the idea of the companies. I mean, I come from a big family, and so large groups of people are something which I gravitate towards. And so I do definitely feel that, and it's something which I'm embracing a lot more. The more experience I get, and the less I have panic when I'm on set, and more about enjoy this experience, because it's a wonderful dream job, and it's exciting to act. Don't be terrified of it. Like, go on there smiling and love every second.
Now, you've done one season of The Witchers, is that right?
Yes, one season of The Witcher, and we just started season 2 before lockdown happened, and we're hopefully going to go back soon.
Right. Because that will hopefully strengthen that feeling more and more as you get into a second season and maybe a third or a fourth. You know.
Wow! What is that?
It's the wizard seal. The gin.
Do you mind if I
Yes, dear.
take back that bit about my fillingless pie? Take it back, and then you can have your ginny gin.
Let go.
No, let go, you horses! Ah!
With Next Generation, which I watched growing up, I was watching an interview recently, and you had said that initially, when you joined the cast, everyone was doing a lot of joking around on set, and there was a lot of good times, and you were a lot more serious, and it was a lot more of the sense of no, we've got to take this seriously. And then throughout the series, as the show went on, you actually opened up a bit more to the idea of it actually being really good fun. And did you try and bring some of that to Picard, to Star Trek Picard? Because I see a lot more in the way of warmth in the character and lightness in the character.
Yes, I'm not a writer. So although I was allowed, as a co-executive producer, I was allowed into the writer's room, but I would just sit there with my mouth open, listening to these great ideas that would flash backwards and forwards across the table, and then be thrown out of the window. And I want to go, no, that was wonderful. I loved being in that room. I wish that I could have recorded every moment that I sat with our writers. But the only things I think that I actually contributed in terms of dialogue were jokes. Like, okay. we had a piece about one of the other characters is reading a very famous, I think, an Asimov book, a science fiction book. And Jean-Luc Picard, I said, you know, I could never really get into science fiction. It didn't mean anything to me. To have Captain Picard talking about science fiction as though it was an alien concept was something which I really enjoyed. And Tea Earl Grey decaf was my idea as well, because I thought it was time to have some jokes with the character, because there was a lot of grimness surround him otherwise, and I was very reluctant to go back to that franchise. But every day, my satisfaction and pleasure and fun grew and grew and grew. And I am so glad that they came up with the idea, Alex Kurtzman and my fellow producers, and that it was, and they cast the group that they have, because we have a brilliant cast with us. It's and that the story is going somewhere else, and it's affecting all the characters very differently. So there's an unexpected quality about it all the time. But like you, we're just waiting to begin our second season.
I need a secure subspace link to Starfleet Command.
What?
And what's the nearest starbase?
Deep Space 12?
Lay in a course.
And so, coming back as a producer on a Star Trek show, what were the differences coming back as a producer, aside from having the luxury of sitting in the writers' room? What were the differences as opposed to just being one of the ensemble actors?
Having a hand in directing where the narrative would go and being able to contribute personal, private feelings about the character, about Jean-Luc Picard, which would also influence the direction of the narrative. Of course, I was also involved in casting too, which I enjoyed very, very much. And although it became very difficult because, you know, you see so many, I mean, with young actors today, there is so much talent around, extraordinary talent.
Yeah.
And it was thrilling. I didn't know, I had no personal connection with any of the actors who were cast in Picard, but auditioning them was exciting and working with them has been even more exciting. Those are the main elements for me of being an executive producer. Also, I do get to hear about things a little bit sooner than the actors do.
Right. You get to have the pages 2 days early rather than the night before.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Issa Briones was absolutely fantastic in the show. What was it like working with her? Because her performances were extraordinary. I thought she brought something incredible to the show, which really worked so well with Picard.
Well, we had a good working relationship. And of course, Issa, in that first season, actually played 3 roles, 3 different creatures who all look the same. Issa is the only member of our company that I asked if I could audition with. So when she came for her final callback, rather than having a casting director's assistant reading with her, I think we did 2 scenes together. And it made such a difference to me to be looking her in the eyes and responding to her and vice versa. Issa came to us hot from Hamilton. She was in the North American tour of Hamilton, and she's a singer, and and a wonderful voice she has too. But for her, it was a transformation. She came from the stage to a sound stage, from a musical to a science fiction drama, and I think we were all a little cautious and a little uncomfortable maybe to begin with, but it very quickly dissipated, and the sense of kind of fearless commitment to doing the job became what everybody was contributing.
Oh,
She's remarkable.
That's the perfect storm.
She was maybe 19, perhaps just 20 when we auditioned her.
Goodness me, that's a big step. That's a big step at that age.
And the same goes for Evan Evagoria, the Australian actor, who plays, well, he didn't play the little boy, but he grows up to be a man and is brought up with warrior nuns. He had very, very little experience, and it has been marvelous working with Evan to see his confidence grow and his risk-taking grow. I actually do at times feel like a father figure because they're all so much younger than me, and I am enjoying their contribution enormously.
You said you'd take me home.
Yes, and I will. But we face a powerful enemy. We can't do it without support. Look, You have no choice but to trust me. I know that would make me angry too, but I understand.
So for you, with Picard, was there anything that you wanted to bring to this character which was going to differ particularly from Next Generation? What were your goals for the character, for the evolution of the character?
I'll try and keep this as short as possible, Henry. During the 7 years that we filmed Next Generation series and the 4 feature films that followed it, without intending to, Picard came closer and closer and closer to me, to Patrick, so that after a while, there was no place that I could identify where Jean-Luc left off and Patrick Stewart began. They became one. So I didn't have to sit and brood about, what kind of breakfast I'd had that morning as my character before I went on the set. There was so much already at work within me. What I did want, and to the writers, I cited the movie Logan that I did with Hugh Jackman, the last of the X-Men movies. Where that last movie, Logan, found the two of us in conditions that were totally unlike anything that we'd experienced before. And it was thrilling for both of us because we were continually being challenged in very different ways. So I said to my fellow producers, I would like the same thing. I don't want you to rewrite Logan for me. No. But the contrast between the Picard that I had been in Next Generation and how the 17, 18 years that had passed had changed and affected him. He was now angry, moody, guilty, sad, lonely, all of those things which he had never been before. So without changing the most internal part of the man, he had to be different. His responses to the world were different from what the Next Generation's Jean-Luc had been. And you will understand how much fun that was.
Yes, absolutely. You almost described my character then when you were saying angry, sad, lonely. It's all of these things that Geralt of Rivia tends to be, and it was one of those challenges to play the character in such a way that all of these things came through, but they didn't dominate the character entirely. So you end up with someone who is wholly unlikable.
I'm reading Kirk Douglas's autobiography at the moment. Nearly finished it, and at one point in that he said that he was given a great piece of advice by Laurence Olivier, that no matter what kind of character you are playing, there must always be one little element, and it can be tiny, which makes that character likable.
Okay.
And I saw it in Olivier's stage performances and some of his screen performances too. And certainly with Kirk Douglas, I could see it. That there was an empathic reaction that one had to them, even in the worst possible conditions. And it was because there was this element of likability, I found. Does that make sense?
It really does make sense, absolutely, and it's something which I wanted to give the character, especially in the show, was an essence of likability or connection, an audience connection, because we had in the books, which the character comes from, there's the luxury of lots of inner monologue and long, complex, nuanced dialogue scenes with other characters. And so despite the exterior of this character, or despite the front he presents and some of the acts he commits, you get an insight to who he is, you get an insight to his philosophies, his beliefs, and the way he views the world. But because the showrunner's vision for this show was far more of an ensemble piece, and the characters of Cyrilla and Yennefer drove the story a lot more. And so I had to try and find a way for the audience to connect to my character in the same way that the reader would connect to the character in the books. And for me, it was because we didn't have the luxury of long, lengthy, wordy dialogue scenes with lots of erudite sentences and philosophy. It was, I thought, okay, instead of making the character emotionally demanding by saying how he's feeling all the time and what his intentions are, I said I'm going to draw back from that and make him more of a cipher for the audience to try and crack, because all the other characters, they have origin stories, and they are, as I say, they're really driving the story forward. And every time Geralt came on screen, I wanted the audience to try and work out who he was. He clearly wasn't a bad guy, even though he's done some bad stuff, and he has a very brusque, stony exterior. And so I wanted to try and show that perhaps that was a stoic exterior instead of stony. And the less he would say, the more the audience would think, what is he thinking? And it became more of a performance of reactions to other characters and listening to other characters. And then you have these few moments where you kind of get to get a tiny insight. And hopefully that worked for the audience to think, oh, okay, I have a connection now and I like him because I'm trying to work him out. And that for me was the major goal with my character.